this reason that I have incorporated some of his shorter poems into this work. They are not offered as analogies for prehistory, vignettes that collapse the distance between then and now. They appear instead as a kind of counterpoint, catching with an enviable clarity how people's lives are shaped by the conditions they inhabit. They are also a reminder that one can write the past and the present without inserting possibly, maybe, into every single sentence. Though it is shaped by the material we recover, interpretation is always subjective and situated, evidence and imagination. Throughout this work, I have followed Brown's lead with respect to the use of certain terms and names. Orcadians generally refer to the largest island in the archipelago as the mainland, rather than simply mainland. They also talk of being in Orkney and in Rousey, rather than being on. Behind these terms are a host of others that shift from one island to another, and even between parishes. But the distinction between on and in is, I think, significant. While the former implies a separation, the latter conveys a more intimate sense of belonging. I've no idea how Brown would have felt about a ferry louper, an incomer from across the Pentland Firth, trying to make some sense of Neolithic Orkney. We met only once, and in passing. He might well have said I'd only scratched the surface, and he'd be right. I imagine there'd be a few choice words about the prose as well. Yet I hope there would be enough to convince him that we do not have to wander clueless through immense tracts of time, an Orkney tapestry. I'd also like to think that there's a point of contact with his insistent rejection of what he saw as sentimental images of the Viking Age. The Neolithic and Norse worlds were far apart in many ways, but both were dramatic and at times brutal chapters in the story of the archipelago. We do no favours to those times by recasting them as a bland and empty heritage. Like any synthesis, this book is selective. It is a personal attempt to imagine some of the conditions in which people in Orkney took on the ways of living and thinking that we call Neolithic. It dwells on some lines of evidence more than others, on people's relationships with stone, and on the mesh of local, regional, and wider political structures in which their lives were situated. For reasons that have as much to do with where we are now as how things were in the Neolithic, it feels important to acknowledge those wider structures and the more basic proposition that we are, all of us, connected. The book also takes a relatively broad brush to chronology. Radiocarbon dating tells us that the Neolithic in the archipelago ran between circa 3,800 and 2,200 BC. Statistical refinements of 14C dates have begun to thread a sense of history through that span, but there are still many sites, including some of the most celebrated, that resist our best attempts to place them in a sequence. Further work will no doubt sharpen our resolution, but even if all our sites were closely dated, we'd still struggle to catch a sense of time as it was made and understood by people. For them, times of the day, month, and year were as much cyclical as they were linear, providing a frame on which the pattern of community life was woven. Work created rhythms too, as did the seasons of a life, the journey from birth to death, and the thresholds that you crossed along the way. And all of these were informed by other kinds of time, genealogy, history, and mythology, life tied to different kinds of past and to a sense of the eternal. Perhaps our greatest difficulty is accepting that chronology creates an order to the past that may not have mattered all that much. The making of this book has been made possible by the generosity of many people. I am grateful to Richard Milbank for extending the invitation, and to Florence Hare, Christian Duck, and